brother. You're listening to Two Brothers Talking Politics. Bye, yo.
Are you listening?
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am on today with Dr. Christine Mann, who is running for Congress in 2020 in the Texas 31st District. Hi, Dr. Mann.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm fabulous.
So we actually spoke a long time ago. It was one of the first episodes we did, I think, talking with candidates back in your previous run for Congress. So it is
I remember.
Yeah, it's a delight to have you back on the podcast now. So
thank you.
Yeah, so our listenership has certainly grown since then. So some people who may not be familiar with you. So could we start with just sort of a general introduction? Tell me a little bit about your background and why you're running for Congress.
Absolutely. I am a family practice doctor in Cedar Park, Texas, which is just north of Austin. I've been working and practicing in medicine for 30 years. And I've been a community activist for about 2 decades, ever since I moved to Central Texas, and a political activist for over a decade. I started with block walking and phone banking for President Obama in his first campaign, then ramped it up and got more active over the years, and have worked with my local Democratic Party for 4 or 5 years now, helping to get other candidates elected and coordinating campaigns and registering voters. And so, I had been thinking about running for quite a while. And, the last cycle, I, like many people, had a rude awakening when Donald Trump won his presidency and decided that I wasn't going to wait any longer to run. And I did. I made it into a Democratic runoff with MJ Hagar, which pretty much everyone knows who that is. Mm-hmm. And now that she is running for Senate in Texas, I'm going to stay in the district and run for Congress again so that we can win this seat. And it is a seat that the Democratic Party has targeted for 2020. MJ lost by just under 3 points, and one of the counties in the district, Williamson County, was solidly blue in the last election. So everyone here knows that this is a flippable seat. We just have to do the work and get the buy-in from national groups to help support us to send the incumbent home.
And you just kicked off your campaign very recently, but what are some of the issues that you think people in the district are especially concerned with? What are things that you're hearing from people both last time around and then if it has changed at all this time?
Healthcare remains at the top of the list. Every meeting I go to, every block walk I do, phone calls that I make, there's someone who has a story to tell me or a personal experience about their healthcare issues and their needs and the things that they've seen and the things that they've heard and the fears that they're feeling. And just recently, for the first time in many, many years, I got a letter from an insurance company that I have to fill out for pre-existing conditions. And that hadn't happened for a long time because of the Affordable Care Act. And now because of the dismantling of that law that the Trump administration has been working on, I have now gotten my first pre-existing clause letter. And it's just a real wake-up call when I tell people that we can't be complacent on it, that healthcare continues to be the number one issue. And there's really, if that's your issue, there's no substitution for putting someone into Congress who has 30 years of immersion on the front lines of healthcare. You can't get that experience from reading policy papers or getting a briefing from your staff. So healthcare is what I hear.
And, we're hearing a lot about Texas right now. I know the 31st District is not right on the border, but given that you're in Texas and given that you are a healthcare practitioner, what are the kinds of things that you're seeing and hearing about what's going on in the border? And, what do you think Congress should be doing about that situation?
My thoughts about what's going on the border is what got me attacked by the National Republican Party last week. I had tweeted on social media that I agreed with AOC about them being concentration camps, and the National Republican Party went after me personally. They attacked me on social media. They attacked me in the regular press. They used my name for a fundraising email asking what's going on in Texas. Dr. Christine Mann is having these radical views. And, they don't do that unless they know that you are onto something. 500 days out from the election, they have targeted me as a candidate who can beat their incumbent. And so through that process of being attacked on social media, I had so much support. So many people reach out and say, we agree with you. And I had tweeted out that I will not back down on this. As a physician, what is happening is putting lives at terrible risk. If a person did the things that are being done to these children in these camps, we would be calling CPS. We would be taking these children out of those conditions by force, and we would be prosecuting the people who were doing them. And the fact that we aren't doing that and that this is a state-sanctioned process is beyond belief to me. And the majority of people in my district understand how beyond the pale this is.
What are some of the kinds of things that you're doing this far out to prepare for an election, the primary of which won't even be for a while yet? What are the kinds of things that it takes to run for Congress? And are there things that you learned last time around that you're then putting into practice this time?
Well, realistically, I never stopped after the runoff last time because you can't in a district like this. This is a district where name recognition matters, where coalitions matter, where relationships that have been built matter. And so after the runoff, it took a little bit of time to recover, and I got back in with friends of mine who helped me on the last campaign, my campaign manager, and I never really stopped doing that work and reaching out to people all across the district, making appearances on panels and forums, and continuing to build those relationships that had already been there. So in reality, I've been running for this seat for 2.5 years now, and there's just nothing that you can do to duplicate that except for do it. And that's the kind of thing it's going to take in this district, is building on the relationships that we created in the last election. And, the big thing that I learned last time is that you have to keep showing up, and you can't just talk to people for the purposes of getting their vote. You have to show them with your actions that you are real and that you are sincere and that you are doing this to help them and help their friends and their neighbors to build a better life. So we have been working that process through the entire last year from the time that I lost that runoff.
So when we talked to people last year about Texas, regardless of who we talked to, what district it was in, people always said, Texas isn't a red state, it's a non-voting state. It seemed like there was a lot more attention to voting in the 2018 election in Texas. Do you think that there is more excitement, more on-the-ground participation? Do you think that the voting numbers will be going up in 2020?
I'm positive that the numbers will go up. So, there's a discussion about Texas in general being a non-voting state, but then there's the individual districts and how they did or did not perform. And having been an activist in this district forever, I know the activists in this county and in the county that is the other part of my district. And these people worked their tails off. At my campaign kickoff last night, I introduced a gentleman who was in the district, and he personally made more than 5,000 phone calls. And he was the second highest phone caller. So these are people who are determined. They're not slacking off. I'm in conversations on a regular basis about how we get more voter registration and more voter buy-in going forward into 2020. So there is so much on the ground work already being done. I'm confident that we're going to have an amazing turnout.
We keep saying Texas is going to turn blue. I feel like it's inching closer and closer to happening on a statewide level. And certainly, there were already a few districts that flipped in 2018.
Well, absolutely. And again, in my district, my county, Williamson County, was solidly blue. Both Beto O'Rourke and MJ Hagar won Williamson County. So there's just no question that this can be done. And having seen that process for the voters in this district, it was like a big shot in the arm. Oh my gosh, yes, we really, really, really can do this. And it just motivated people to continue the work going into 2020.
I want to ask, too, about women's rights. This is obviously an issue that's really come up lately. Women's rights seem to be constantly under attack with this administration, and then states are being emboldened to also attack women's rights. I know that in Texas there has been somewhat of a lack of accessibility to clinics and things for women. Can you talk some about the way that women's issues aren't being addressed right now, things that you would like to see Congress doing, ways that your background as a doctor helps inform those?
Yes, absolutely. So in addition to the campaign work that I've been doing since last time, I've also been working with the state legislature. I sit on the Healthcare Advisory Board for Representative John Busey. He's a state representative that I've known for several years. And he created community boards on different topics, and I sit on the healthcare board. So, we were tracking and following all sorts of healthcare-related legislation. For example, there were multiple bills filed to try and address maternal mortality within the state. And we made some progress with those. So the Texas state legislature was not a complete wash this time, as it has been in other years. There were a few things that happened, but women's rights, it's unbelievable that we've gotten to this point. And I tried telling people when Kavanaugh was appointed to the Supreme Court, I said, this is the first step towards overturning Roe v. Wade. You watch, they're going to start putting cases together that they've been sitting on for years, and they're going to start moving those pieces of legislation through different states for the purpose of getting them to the Supreme Court and trying to overturn the law. And sure enough, that is exactly what has happened. And, I was called an alarmist about it for a while until people kind of went, oh my gosh, they really, really are doing this. And it's especially galling to me as a doctor because so much of the legislation that has been written and passed has nothing to do with anything scientific whatsoever. They use absolute false information in convincing people to support these laws, and I'm furious about it. I've spent my entire career working to make sure that women in my practice were able to practice bodily autonomy, to put off pregnancy when they wanted to obtain necessary services when they needed to. And it's like a slap in the face to all the work that I've been doing for the past 20 years. So I'm angry and I'm appalled. And, I wish I could say there was just one or two things that need to be changed or fixed. The problem is the Supreme Court and the fact that the lower courts are being packed by judges that the right wing has specifically picked out to advance forward and block women's rights. And those appointees are there for life. We are going to be fighting this fight until I die, for sure. And a lot of people have not digested that information yet. They have not recognized that This is not something that's just going to change when we flip Congress in 2020 and when we have a new president. It's something that we are going to have to be fighting for decades.
In the area of Texas where you are, is there a large immigrant population? Are you seeing the effects of, not just the people who are being stopped at the borders, but the people who are already within the state of Texas and the effects that it's having on them?
My specific counties have a relatively small proportion of people who are immigrants. It's a very solidly majority white district, but adjacent to us in Austin, which is 25 minutes from my house, there's a lot of concern among immigrant populations about what is going to happen with these laws by tweet that Donald Trump keeps putting out there. And, even though my particular district doesn't have a large immigrant population, we are worried and we are concerned. We've got the Teton Hutto Detention Center, which is a facility specifically for women who have sought asylum and are trying to work through that process. And we regularly have protests there. We regularly see abuses that are happening in the facility. We have been pushing the county commissioners to end their contract with that facility. So there's a lot of on-the-ground work being done in this district, regardless of the fact that we don't specifically have large immigrant populations in the district.
So you are a mother, and we like to talk to people who have children about how that helps inform their worldview. And also, we always want to encourage more moms to get involved in the political process. And so thinking about, what that means, what having mothers in Congress would mean. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So you can see what having moms in legislative bodies does by what happened in New Mexico, where the state legislature is now majority women, and there are laws being passed for things like tax-free feminine hygiene products. There are laws for extended maternity leave. There are so many issues that are being passed specific to women. And I get that men can be supportive of women and men can have an understanding of women's rights, but quite frankly, men have had 240 years to enact these types of laws and these pieces of legislation that are important to women and that impact women more than men, and it hasn't been done. So I don't really make any apologies for saying that we need more women in positions of power because we have had 240 years of not holding that power, and it's time.
If people who are listening would like to help out your campaign, how can they do that?
I have a website, Christine4Congress.com, and that is the number 4. And of course, there is a link for donations. Right now, we have an FEC filing deadline coming up on June 30th. And so I am doing something differently than I did last time. I definitely I was not as aggressive with fundraising as I should have been last time. And I will tell you, my attitude this time is that we have a crisis. We are in an emergency. And so I am very upfront in telling people that if you are upset about what is happening at the border, if you are upset about the erosion of rights for people of color and women and LGBTQIA Americans, the only way that gets fixed is if we put people in Congress and in other legislative bodies who will fix it, and that requires money. So think about how upset you are. Think about how dedicated you are going to be to making that happen, and please donate. We just cannot get there any other way, and it's a choice between people who will not have your interests at heart, who are taking their direction from big donors and from PAC money, or from people like me who are relying on the people on the ground and the grassroots to say enough. But to do that, I need your money and I need your time. And you can get to those links through my website, christineforcongress.com.
Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talk about?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm telling people right now is it is not too early to be doing this. This is a process that is going to have to have an extensive amount of time and energy put into it. We have not just Republicans working against us, and Republicans are determined to hang on to power no matter what. But we also have foreign countries who have interfered with our elective process. And the only way that we can fight back is for everyone to do something. Everyone has to make phone calls. Everyone has to block walk. Everyone has to donate. Everyone has to run if it's possible. You have to commit to doing something or else we're lost. So please, everybody, please find a candidate that you can get behind, that you can believe in, and get active starting right now.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm really excited that you're running again. And I think having MJ Hagar at the top of the ticket running for Senate and you running for Congress is a super exciting pairing. So I'm really excited.
Very exciting. Yes. Thank you very much.
All right. Excellent. We'll put your website up on our website so people can check that out and hopefully donate some money.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I'll come back anytime.
I am on today with Jennie Lou Leeder, who is running for Congress in the Texas 21st District. Hi, Jennie Lou.
Hi, how are you this evening?
Great. Thank you for joining me again. So we spoke to you last year, pretty close to the 2018 election. So I'm thrilled to have you back on.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So for anybody who didn't catch that episode or who doesn't remember, could you just give a little bit of background about yourself and why you are running for Congress?
Sure. I'm a seventh-generation Texan, and I'm very passionate about what happens in our state and for our citizens and for our country. So those things have driven me to watch how our current elected officials have been voting and how those votes have positively and negatively impacted our communities and our state. And I don't feel like they have been voting in our best interest. So I decided that I would do something. I've been county chair in Llano County, which is my home for most of my adult life. And I was a committee woman for Senate District Executive Committee, and I served on the rural and the urban subcommittee. So I have some knowledge about politics and how it works, but I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself an activist that's trying to make where we all live and work a better place for all of us. So that's why I've got into the race. My background is a seventh-generation Texan, and I am running in 21 this time, which is different than where I ran last time. I have moved since the last election permanently to Austin, and I live on the property that my mom's parents purchased in 1949, and it just holds lots of meaning and special times for me. But I've really, really deep ties to this district, Kelly. My great-grandfather bought our family farm in 1882. It is a Texas Century family farm, and my family still farms it today. And that's in Kerr County between Comfort and Center Point. And then Kendall County, I'm a member of the founding families of Kendall County and a direct descendant of 6 families that are given credit for helping settle that area. So I have really deep ties to the district that not just people I know, but family. And I was raised on the weekends and during the summertime at our farm. So what happens to this area is very personal to me. So I would like a representative that lives in the district, that knows the district, that understands the district, and really has some skin in this game to be the representative for District 21. And I believe I'm the best candidate for that.
So last time around in the district you were running in 2018, that was an extremely difficult district for a Democrat to run in. This one is quite a bit closer. Can you talk a little bit about the 21st District, the kinds of things that people there are really concerned with?
Yes, so the 21st District is made up of 10 counties. I like to say it's like you throw a paintball at Travis County, and then you connect it with a Sharpie through Hayes, Comal, and you throw a paintball in Bexar County, and then you turn left and you go out. It takes all of Kendall, Blanco, Gillespie, Real, Bandera, Kerr. So what's interesting is we have urban, we have Austin, Hayes, Comal, and Bexar, very urban. And then Bernie, which is Kendall County, which is becoming more urban. And then you have the rural of Blanco and Gillespie and Kerr and Real and Bandera. That I've been in all 10 counties. I've actively been working this election since April 1st. I had submitted my paperwork before that, but actively boots on the ground since April 1st. And it's like everybody is concerned about the multitude of the same thing. They're all very, very concerned about their health care. They're concerned about public education. They're concerned about border security. But they're on the flip to the border security, they're also worried about trade. What is the border security? How closing down the borders? That talk, how is it going to affect our trade? Because that's Texas' number one trading partner is Mexico. They're also worried about infrastructure, roads and bridges, yes, but the rural area is also worried about high-speed internet access. If they have access to it, it's not affordable. A lot of the area doesn't even have access. And they're worried about sustainable energy, how we're all growing and our population is getting larger each year. They're worried about one day we won't have what we need, whether it's energy, whether it's water, whether it's food. So those have been the main topics as I've gone through all 10 counties that everybody has really been talking with me about and they're concerned about.
So this is a different district, but presumably some of the things that you learned last time around, some of the things about campaigning can certainly be relevant anywhere that you're running. What do you think are kind of some of the lessons that you learned running for Congress last time that are really helping you get a good start this time?
Well, before I decided to run last time, I sat down with a piece of notebook paper. I was a public school teacher and coach for 11 years, and I still have scads of notebook paper. And I sat down with my notebook paper and my pen, and I wrote down, what do I want from my congresswoman? And one of the first things that was on that list was, I want them to know me. I want them to know my district, my pains, and what's important. And that's what I really tried to do last time, and what I've been doing this time is introducing myself to the district. Yes, I'm kin to people in all 10 of the 10 counties. Yes, I grew up going through all of them, doing 4-H stuff and rodeoing and selling hay with my dad. But they need to know who I am, just like I need to know who they are. What's important to them, Gillespie County, Blanco County. They're right now very concerned about a water pipeline that's being pushed through their area. You know, the rural part of Bandera and Real and Kerr County, they're worried about farming and the subsidies and what's going on there. You know, where our big cities are worried about different things, the price of, you know, sending their kids to college, which is really felt throughout the district. But each part of it is concerned about different things. And I think my job, not only as a candidate, but saying I'm successful and I win the primary and then I win the general, my job is to be out in the district, is to meet with every person I can meet with and let them know that I'm listening to what they want me to hear. Not that I'm hearing what I want to, but I'm hearing what they're saying, what's important to them. I think that's our problem right now, Kelly, is that our elected officials aren't getting out in the districts and they're not hearing what their constituents are really saying. They're hearing what they want to hear so they can go back and make the votes like they want to make them. We have to have accountability, and I think that's the biggest thing that I learned from my previous run is I have to be accountable to every single voter in that district. I have to be willing to put over 60,000 miles on my car in 22 months like I did last time. I have to be willing to have late nights and early mornings to meet with them when they're able to meet. And I think that's very important. If I'm elected, then I'm their representative. They pay my salary. They can give me a pink slip if they so choose. I don't want a pink slip. I want to represent them to the best of my ability, which means getting out there, driving the miles, drinking the coffee, and listening to everything they have to say.
How are you finding the energy? What are people sort of thinking about politics? Are they excited to be voting in 2020? Are they disgusted with politics right now? What does that feel like on the ground?
Well, it depends on who you talk with. Was there a candidate, our presidential nominee this last time around? The politics that I've encountered are at multiple levels. So if you're talking about the presidential election, everybody's excited. They're also worried that we have so many candidates that at the end of the day, we're going to have multiple hurt voters who are going to stay at home and not vote because their candidate's not our nominee, which is very worrisome to myself because we have such a large range to choose from. But I also think it's so exciting that we have so many to choose from. I mean, no matter what you stand for, somebody on those two stages are going to represent what you believe in. And so every single person has the opportunity of this presidential election to choose their person and get behind them and put out the yard signs and make the phone calls and do the block walking. That part is really exciting. Right now, what I will say is that we have donor fatigue. They are busy putting their money to those presidential elections. And I've talked to a multitude of U.S. House candidates and statewide candidates who have said the same thing. Everybody is so focused on that presidential election that they are not funding the down ballot races right now. They've all said, let us get our nominee and then come back to us. We'll give that we want to get our presidential nominee first. The only issue with that is that the rest of the down ballot has to figure out how are they going to hire staff, open offices, drive through the district, have fundraisers, have events when the money comparative to last cycle isn't at the same par right now. So it's a challenge. But, if you're willing just to go into a coffee shop and grab a coffee and sit down and visit, you don't have to have a lot of funding. You just have to be able to get up at the crack of dawn and make the drive.
And drink a lot of coffee.
And drink a lot of coffee, which is, that's what I did last time. I laughed all the time and said, this is a coffee and a Dairy Queen tour, which we actually did a Dairy Queen tour. We went to every single county, in several of the counties, multiple cities, and met people at the Dairy Queen, let them know we were coming ahead and had Democratic groups meet at the Dairy Queen. And we laughed that in rural Texas, some rural Texas towns, Dairy Queen was the only place they really had to go eat. And so it made sense.
You mentioned that you are a former teacher. I believe you're also the daughter of teachers. Can you talk some about education, the state of education in Texas, and the kinds of things that the federal government could and should be doing to help education?
Well, I'll start off with I was glad to see that the teachers are getting a raise this year, and that's due to our state legislature. As a teacher of 11 years and a coach in public school, and my mom is a retired teacher of 27 years and my dad of 25 years, we laugh and say it's the family business because I have cousins on both sides of the family, my mom and my dad's side, that are teachers and coaches and principals. And, it's very concerning to me when we put so much emphasis on a test instead of curriculum. I am a USA club swim coach, so I have nothing to do with the school districts anymore. But my swimmers come to me after school and they're wiped out because they've had 2 days of STAR testing. Or they'll say, yeah, we're done with our testing, so the last 6 weeks we're just messing around in class because we've already taken the test. I have a real problem with that. We need to go back to they're supposed to be teaching a curriculum-based education. But we need to go back and teach a curriculum that's based in education, not on what is in a test that our kids are going to take. Do we need an assessment? Yes, but we don't need an assessment that is a live-all, die-all, that teachers' jobs hang in the balance, that their paychecks hang in the balance, or a bonus hangs in the balance, or a rating on a campus hangs in the balance. When I was in school, we did the Illinois standardized test and the California achievement test. And I look back at my class and I'm the last of 4 children, and we all turned out pretty darn good. And we didn't have this massive stress of, 4 to 6 days, depending on what grade level you're in, to take this test. So basically, I would like to see us teaching curriculum, not teaching based to a test. I would like to earn a salary for our teachers where they don't have to go at night or on the weekends or in the summer and get second and third jobs to make ends meet. If they're standing up there worried about an unexpected, tire that they have to buy or air conditioner replacement, how are they supposed to be teaching that day when their mind is focused on what am I not going to pay this month so I can make this unexpected emergency so I can cover it? And that's where many of our teachers are today in the state of Texas, is they live paycheck to paycheck and they don't have a nest egg to make for those unexpected expenses. Now, where our federal government can come in is at one point in time, the majority of our money for education used to come from the federal government, and the state government and the local subsidized it. We need to get back more to where our federal government carries a larger part of the purse. If you have paid attention to our local property taxes and our tax base, it's stressed to the max. There is no more room to give there in many, many communities. And it's time that the federal government steps back in and helped. Multiple ways they can do it. I would like to see our public education have higher salaries, higher starting wages for our teachers. I'd like to see our teachers paid what they're worth. And right now they're not. That was one of the reasons that I got out of education, was I looked at what my parents were retiring on and what my friends who weren't in education were making right away. And they were making 2 and 3 times what my parents' last salaries after 25 and 27 years of teaching were. And I just couldn't see myself being in that field for that long with that little bit of money, because they weren't able to make ends meet. And how can you give your life to that in knowing that your family will suffer? I miss teaching tremendously. I miss the children, but I've been able to find a way to stay with my fingers working with children by coaching. And I'm a swim coach, and I absolutely love it. We average 100 kids and 4 assistant coaches, so it's a large program. Now the federal government can come in here and make student loans 0 interest. They can come in here and pay off all of the student loans with what Mr. Trump wants to pay on a border wall. They can come in and do community college for free for the first 2 years. All of that will help our education. They can come in and give money for a base of a salary that will help build the salaries for teachers. All of these are little things that they could easily do if they would quit giving tax breaks to the top 1% and the businesses.
I wanted to talk too about energy. I know when people think about Texas, they think about oil, natural gas, but Texas is actually the leader in wind energy. So what are some of the ways you can see Texas sort of leading the way in terms of transition to a more green economy?
I would love to see Texas using wind and solar together with the petroleum. All 3, if we work it correctly, we could be the leaders in all 3. We already are the leaders in wind energy produced by wind turbines. We have so many days of sunshine. It would very easily be the leaders in solar power also. The way to get that is we have to start with an educational program. This is the basis of what we need to do. If we do A, then we get B and C. And let everybody understand that. I was speaking a couple of weeks ago, and a lady came up and she said, well, wind energy is great, but it kills all the birds. And I said, well, for 22 months, I drove by wind fields, multiple times a week, and I didn't see dead birds at the bottom. Explain what you're talking about. She didn't have a newspaper article. She couldn't point me to a magazine, but that's what she'd been told. So the first thing we need to do is we need to educate everybody about how the turbines work. Sometimes they look like they're stopped. It's because they are stopped. They're on a timer. They work at certain times. So no, it's not a waste of money when you drive by and see 20 of them not moving. So we need to educate everybody how the program works, how the energy is gathered, how it goes back in and then gets put out to the market to be sold. But also when we transition to solar, we also need to talk about solar as not only consumers, but solar as a consumer selling it back to the energy, to the company. And that's a whole different thing, Kelly, because 2 years ago, I went to a doctor in Austin, and I was really upset. I was running late, and I had a dress on and high heels, and anybody who knows me knows I love those big 4-inch heels. And I had to walk 2.5 blocks to get to the office because everything was parked up. The parking lot had, the do not enter, the yellow tape on it, and they had built a carport. And I got up to the 3rd floor to where the doctor was, and I looked out, and what they had been busy doing was on top of those carports were solid solar panels now. And when I asked my doctor, I said, what's going on? He said, this building is now completely solar. It's off the grid. So you have to think about the companies that we buy the energy from. Instead of us being the consumer, they are now could be the consumer buying back all of the solar that we don't use in our homes and in our businesses, and then in turn selling that to the people who don't have solar on their home or the businesses who don't have solar, and then supplementing that with the wind energy. So now we have solar and we have wind, and then supplementing that with petroleum. What I like to tell people is petroleum doesn't mean that we have to use it for gas and oil. Think about everything that we have that's in our house that's made from a petroleum byproduct, from the plastics. It's not that industry would go away. It's just we would be using in a different way.
So if our listeners are getting really excited about your campaign, and I know everyone would like to flip more districts, especially in Texas, how can they help out?
I always close and ask them for 3 things. The first one I ask them to do is to go to our website, JennieLouLeeder.com, and volunteer. The second thing I ask them to do is follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on our .com site, sign up for our emails. And the third thing is to donate to our campaign. We're all so excited about our presidential nominees, but I'm excited about this race. If we can continue to gain seats in the House, it just makes our percentage higher, and it means that we have more chance of holding firm on every bill that our speaker puts to us to vote on, which is very, very important. So I just ask for them to find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on our .com site, follow us, volunteer, and then donate to our campaign. And we have a secure Act Blue link, so if they've donated to other campaigns, it comes up and it's very easy for them to donate to ours too.
And it's worth reminding everyone that if you would like Texas to go blue in the Senate and presidential elections, you got to get people out voting in the House races.
Yeah. And we had such a great turnout in our last midterm. And I just hope that all of the work that we did as candidates and that the activists did and the local parties, I hope that everybody keeps that enthusiasm and they find a candidate and they get behind that candidate, whether it's a presidential, whether it's a state, whether it's a Senate, whether it's a U.S. House. Get excited about your candidate and support them to the best of your ability and help get those people to the polls to vote. That's how we're going to win this election, is to have the highest voter turnout we've ever had in history.
I love it. Well, thank you very much, Jennie Lou, for speaking with me. I'm really excited that you're running again, and especially in a district that is a lot more winnable. I love when people run in the districts that are a lot harder, but they are, of course, very hard.
Well, Kelly, the last district I ran in was considered the reddest House district in the United States, and we held him to the lowest percentile in the largest 3 counties. And I understood that my job was to help bring voters in for the statewide candidates in the local races, that our race was very tight from the very beginning. That this race, yes, it is winnable, but I'm in this because this district is where I live. It's my permanent residence now, and it has my heart. And I just want someone who understands it, who believes in it, who can relate to it, and who lives in it, because Chip Roy lives in 25, not in 21.
Well, I am thrilled that you're running, and I'm so glad you took the time to talk with me today. And I'm sure we'll catch back up with you as the election gets closer. So thank you, and we'll put your information up on our website so people can check out your campaign.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure visiting with you.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.